Well, good morning, everybody. I know you guys can do better than that. Good morning, everybody. That's right. I know the time zones are tough. I was on the flight from Dallas in here with many of you yesterday. So, let me start first by saying thank you for making time for me this morning to talk about sort of this concept of customers are changing and the thought behind this that sales needs to keep up. Now, let me be clear when I say the word sales. I don't just mean quota-bearing sales reps. I mean customer-facing parts of the organization that are interacting with customers all the time. I mean product marketing teams and management teams that are developing the products that are going to be brought to market. I mean the marketing teams that are positioning the way the business and the brand actually are viewed in the marketplace. I mean the customer service agents, customer service representatives, customer success organizations that really are there to support you, all the way down to even the receptionists at your offices. It is all about thinking differently about the act of engaging and driving business for you, but more importantly, ultimately, for your customers. So before I start, I first want to say thank you. Thank you for Wipro and the executive team, Gurvinder and everybody else, as well the Aperio team for being such great clients and customers of mine over the years, and now that they're part of the Wipro family. Previous to joining Salesforce, I was a research fellow and distinguished analyst at Gartner for a decade, covering sort of go-to-market and sales strategies and really thinking and helping and working with tech providers and systems integrators on the way in which they package and sell and go to market. And so I like to say that I have seen Aperio grow up, so it's just really fantastic to watch this next chapter in their evolution. So let me start at the top. Everything you're going to hear today, tomorrow, talks about this concept of change. And at the end of the day, change is inevitable. But let me be really clear. Growth is optional. Because if you don't change, if you don't think differently about the way you approach your customers' problems, the way you approach, the way you construct and craft products, the way you go to market, the way you sell, the way you service, your customers will know it. And they'll know it full stop. And they start to behave differently with you because of it. So let me start the scene. And by setting this scene, speaking to a room like you just stay with me for a moment, because a lot of this you know, but it frames up what I will bring to you after that. Is that we are absolutely full stop in the middle of what the World Economic Forum calls the Fourth Industrial Revolution. What's fascinating about this is I feel like we just got to the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and I'm already hearing people talk about the Fifth Industrial Revolution. And I'm like, boy, we haven't even caught up to being connected. So the conversation used to be about sort of digitizing the data center, modernizing what's happening in the back office, driving down costs, thinking about cloud. What does that mean? Hybrid, on and off premise. Am I going to lift and shift things to the data center that someone else owns and manages? Am I going to look for scale in different ways? And then we move to this conversation about, hold on a second, we now have all this power in the hands of our customers and our employees and our partners and our vendors and our shareholders. And how can we be more connected with them? And so over this last sort of 300 years, the world has seen incredible innovation, unprecedented change. We're talking about how the future of work will look very different than it does today. I'm a firm believer that it is not about machines replacing humans. I'm much more about sort of human and machine finding a way to work together to improve the lives of people, societies, improve performance for businesses and employees, but more importantly, trying to democratize and make available all the things we have in mature and developed countries more broadly across the world. With that, we have to remember that only the strongest survive. It isn't maybe the most intelligent, but it is those that are most adaptable to change. So going back to change is hard, change is inevitable, but really it's optional. We have to find a way to get comfortable with what makes us potentially uncomfortable. So we have this disruption. But along with disruption, I'm kind of a glass half full gal. There is a ton of opportunity. That it isn't just doom and gloom and that everything is going to turn in a direction that makes those of you in this room irrelevant. I don't think that's going to happen. Ultimately, it's how can we really bring together the opportunity that we have in front of us? You know, not only because of where I work, but ultimately I would tell you that every single day I do not believe we or Wipro sells technology or IBM or anybody else. At the end of the day, I fully believe we sell change. And selling change is a very, very different conversation. Why would businesses want to work with you? Because they're trying to, and they have identified that they need to change in order to remain relevant, competitive, and serve their customers. Ultimately, your goal should be, how do you help your customers be successful with their customers? Getting bills out faster, servicing them faster in customer service, getting quotes out faster, doing commerce faster, being better on the sustainability footprint, whatever it might be, it's really about that success. And so when you think about that, it goes across sort of three key categories. One is speed. Now, I want to be really clear here. I don't mean go fast and get sloppy. What I mean is we have to think about getting to where our customers want us to be just ahead of when they're going to get there. So now, do you need to be Jeff Bezos and say, I think 20 years from now, starting in the book business and selling books online is going to lead me to AWS? Is it Mark Benioff saying, do I think that software as a service back in the late 90s was going to lead us to this entire functional change in the way businesses manage and consume technology? Is it that we need to think about differently from I have to get out 2, 3, 4 years with an Apple iPhone? I'm going to guess that I don't think Steve Jobs ever thought that there would be more iPhones on the planet than toothbrushes. No laugh? One more time. So I don't think Steve Jobs thought that there would be more iPhones on the planet than toothbrushes. I mean, ultimately, that's probably not what he imagined would happen. And there's been some stats that have recently come out that there are more than there are humans on the planet because people have multiple devices. Even though there is a large group of humans that do not have technology the way we do, it still is overrun by the multiple devices that we have. So I just need you to get out 18, 24 months ahead of where they need to be. You as a business, that's different. But it's about you telling the story of where we think they need to go. If you try to push them too far ahead, the problem with that is not all companies can absorb the pace of change and innovation that we all know they need to do. We have to make sure we just stay just ahead of where they need to be. The other thing is this exploitation of technology. It's really fascinating to me. You know, there was a time when I was early in the cloud. It was sort of 99 to 2002, 2003, 2004. I was Eloqua's beta client. I was Constant Contact's beta client. I worked and ran the sales, marketing, and customer service for the largest web hosting company in the US. At the time, we were 4 times the size of Rackspace, about 140 million in recurring revenue. This is 2002, mind you. We were standing up all kinds of really amazing technology. We were just a little early. But if I fast forward and think about, we were talking about selling via chat and being much more personalized in email marketing back in 2002, and I still have that conversation today in 2019. The challenge we have is we haven't been able to take advantage of all the technology that's now at our fingertips. Now, I'm going to say this in 2 ways to this audience. One is your customers are not taking advantage, but more importantly, are you taking advantage as leaders? Are you using the technology that you have at your disposal to run better forecast meetings and pipeline meetings? Are you segmenting your customers to do stronger account-based marketing campaigns? Are you personalizing those communications? Are you prioritizing what it is that you need to talk to them about? And ultimately, the third leg of this stool is the fact that for me, the customer is far more disruptive than technology could ever be. Because we as consumers demand more from brands. It isn't that the brands wake up one day and go, I think I'm going to completely blow up my profitable business model because I just want everyone to really hate coming to work today. What happened was they said, our customers are starting to leave us in droves because they can go get something better, faster, cheaper somewhere else, or just better, faster, and more expensive somewhere else, or better and more expensive somewhere else. The point is that customers are much more capable of switching brands because the barrier to entry and exit has gotten much lower. When you think about that from an experience standpoint, we look at it across three pillars. One is you need to know everything about the customer. The only way for you to know everything about the customer is you actually have to capture it, you have to use it, you have to analyze it. So in many ways, people have used this term sort of data is the new oil. And while I like that, I think it misses the point because you cannot pull up to an oil rig and with your car and sort of pump the oil and your car will drive away. No, that's not what happens. If data is the oil, analytics is the refinery, and petrol is the gasoline that powers the business. So you have to get below that. And so knowing your customer means you need all three of those things. In order for you to personalize and engage with your customers in a meaningful way. Now, once again, I say this on two fronts. One, this is your story to your customers of why they should invest in the things that you're doing around Salesforce and others. Two, how do you actually do it to serve those customers better so that they can ultimately serve their customers better? And personalization is sort of table stakes now. But what has happened is we've moved from sort of dear customer to dear Tiffany Bova to dear Tiffany, and while that's personalized, the remainder of that communication is not. So I'm a frequent flyer, and I'm at the highest tier of my preferred airline, and I still get, dear Tiffany, and then I get the canned message. And it might even be something like, why don't you sign up for our credit card that you already have? And I get 2 or 3 messages, through the mail every month to sign up for that credit card. Multiply that across millions of customers. How much do you think they're spending on that? Because the data is separated and segregated. It's siloed. They're not communicating between those two. So me, at the highest tier, I still don't have this seamless, integrated, know me, personalize, and engage with me at the right level. For one of the largest companies in the world. So this isn't reserved for just small. Those that are large and established have all kinds of legacy systems, legacy processes they have to work themselves through. When you were just hearing before about sort of how call center metrics have gone down, wait times have gone down, it was because we moved from being very reactive. I'm going to go back to this, know me, personalize, and engage. Reactive was, my website is down, I call up what's going on. Hosting, customer service, or my network is down, or my phone line is down, something is down, and they call in, and the call center spikes. And we would be reactive to, do we have enough people to take that? Hold times increase, quality of service declines, customer satisfaction declines. And so we were really in this reactive mode because technology had not yet caught up to allowing us to be much more proactive. Proactive in the sense that someone said, well, there's this data that we get these spikes at the end of the month. Why don't we analyze it with the intelligence and analytics? Then why don't we look for those signals and the intelligence that it gives us to be the gasoline to change this behavior? So we noticed that at the end of the month, people's credit cards would expire. And so why don't we get ahead of that credit card expiring by 60 days, reach out and say to them, your credit card is going to expire. We don't want to risk you losing service, so we want to get ahead of that and say, why don't you update your credit card, and then there will be no service interruption. Something that simple. And I used that example because I managed the call center, and it would spike, and we couldn't figure out why, and when we figured out why, we fixed that one little thing, and we solved this quality, churn, customer satisfaction problem. So in the 2000s, it was technology allowed us to be much more proactive. Now we are in this age with the fourth industrial revolution and everything that's happening around this to become much more predictive. Customers who buy apples and oranges are more likely to buy pineapples. How do we find more customers who buy apples and oranges? And how do we start to show them pineapples? And what source of customer is the most advantageous for us? Which customers are the most profitable for you? Do you know which customers have not contacted you or you haven't spoken to in the last 18 months? What is your cadence to keep in touch with them? When do you know they're going to reach out and they're probably going to be ready for the next tool or process change or service to shore up their customer experience? You have the data. You have the information. How you use it now is up to you. You're going to wait for the customer to call, which then means they're calling everybody in your competitive stack. You're going to be more proactive, but are you early enough? Or are you going to be predictive and say, I know customers in this industry, in this vertical, are more likely to buy this from us because we've provided these things, and I'm going to use that knowledge that I have that my competitors don't have in order to give me improved performance, right? Outperforming the competition sits squarely in these sort of three things. How you respond, when you respond, and what you say, and how you engage. With this comes a ton of personalization. It used to be, and I'm using this as an example, right? Wipro, we do this, right? This sort of one-to-many, big brand conversation into your customer base. This is what we're doing. Here's an announcement between this and this that we're doing. Here's a new product we're launching, or a new service we're launching, or here's a case study. It's kind of this one-to-many. And we've moved to where customers now expect this one-to-one conversation. Talk to me like you know me. Remember, engage with me in a personalized way. Because at the end of the day, consumers expect this personalized experience. Now, you may say, well, wait a second, Tiffany. Like, we don't sell to consumers. We sell to business. Fair point. But this number being consumer, I'm here to tell you, is actually higher for B2B. B2B actually has higher expectations on the personalized engagement they expect from brands. Because why? We're all consumers in our personal life. And then when we show up to work, we have this expectation that if I can get this in my personal life, I absolutely should be able to get more and better in my business life. And when you start to think across that, you have to think differently about being brand-driven. Thinking all the ways in which businesses can now find, engage, conduct commerce with a brand. Do you have an Alexa app for your customers? Are you investing in something that says, hey, I want to know what I should be doing next? Do you have some kind of service that's going to push through on voice to help sell the services that you do? Are you wrapping voice into those things to engage the customer across the entire journey? So even for us, at the end of the day, it might be a shock for you to know that salespeople do not wake up every day looking forward to entering data into a CRM system. I know, it's surprising, but it's not what they do. So how do we overcome that? Is how do we get them to be able to tell the message as they're leaving a customer via voice? How do we take that unstructured data and summarize it in a way that gives you the action in order to be much more predictive about what to do next? You have to think differently about this journey that our customers are on. Our joint customers, your own customers, and then customers within your own team and your own company. You're servicing all kinds of customer in the same way that you do from a sales perspective. And why? Because we have to start to move to be very engagement-driven. Outcome, engagement-driven. Trust me when I tell you, if you're looking to outperform the competition, this is the place to do it. If you start to make customers feel like you know them better than anybody else, your competition will be chasing you to figure out how are they able to be so on top from a predictive standpoint, from a personalization standpoint, from a know standpoint. How are they able to take all this information and wrap it together in order to make their customers so successful? And it happens here. It happens when you start to engage customers in a different way. And so I went on this journey about 3 years ago when I joined Salesforce in writing a book called Growth IQ. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to take all these conversations I'd had as a Gartner analyst, over the 10 years, it was probably almost 5,000 inquiry calls, the dozens and dozens of research notes I'd written, and the hundreds of keynotes that I'd given. And here's what I'd get asked. Hey, Tiffany, we're in quarter and we're having trouble. We need to shore it up. It was very difficult for me to give advice that could bring someone back to whole in a given quarter. So I had to find a way to get them to think that it is this multiplier effect of ways in which you can grow the business. There is nothing on this image here that you're going to go, wow, I've never seen that before. And that was my point. I tried to take things that were familiar to everybody and say, how do I modernize them with the fourth industrial revolution in mind, with social media in mind, with digitizing the business, with customer experience being at the forefront, with all the things we have happening around us and all this capability we have. There's just no way things should remain the same. So that was the beginning of this effort. And what I wanted to lean into was to say, I've been talking about customer experience being this competitive battleground now for almost 8 years. I was part of the team that made the prediction that the chief marketing officer was going to spend more than the CIO by 2018. And of course, it set off this flurry of acquisitions. Salesforce bought, Microsoft bought, Oracle bought, SAP bought, everybody bought, because everyone was trying to get these additional dollars. The good news is that the prediction came almost right on the money on the percentage of what was going to happen. And marketers are continuing to spend more, but really it's because 68% of the C-suite is starting to emphasize customer experience actually over the products it is that they're developing and selling. That's a huge statement, because if you are a technology company, right, you lead with product. You're product-led. You're not necessarily customer-led. If you start to get executives interested, a lot of it is because 67% of us are willing to spend more for a great experience. Pick any industry. We could have stayed here. We could have stayed, at the Holiday Inn 2 blocks away. Gives you a hotel room, doesn't it? Gives you potentially a ballroom to speak in. But you have a very different experience if you're at the Waldorf. And you're also willing to spend more money for it. If you look at companies that have pivoted towards customer experience, you see that they are growing 4 to 8% above their market. You could rattle off a handful of them. I'm going to focus on the consumer side of things, but you could say, well, it could be Starbucks. It could even be somebody like Uber. And you may say, well, gosh, I don't really think Uber or Starbucks provides a great experience, but you have to think about the job that it's doing. And so I pick on Uber quite a bit because it's an easy one. How many of you have caught an Uber in the last 30 days? Okay, keep your hands up for a second. Keep your hand up if you remember what you paid. Everybody else put your hands down. So a handful of you, let's say of everybody, 5, 7, 8% of you maybe left your hands up and you know what you paid. You don't even know what you paid. In some cases, I'm just going to use myself as an example. I've stood on a corner in Buffalo when it was sub-degree weather, outside looking at my smartphone, watching the car move as it comes closer and closer to me, during surge pricing, as taxis drove by. Now, I'm either totally crazy, or I was waiting because of that experience. One, I knew where the car was. It connected directly to my expense report. I didn't have to worry about having cash in my pocket or my credit card not working, and someone knew where I was last. That, for me, is all about experience. And ultimately, if you're paying for surge pricing, over a taxi, you're spending more money, right? The other one is sort of Starbucks. So there's free coffee outside. How many of you went to Serendipity to get a cup of coffee this morning? Anybody? So it was sort of, $5, $7, $8, or free. And usually when I speak at an event, there's a Starbucks outside. The line is 50 or 60 deep, and like 10 feet away is free coffee. And you go, it's free or it's $5? Free, $5. And I always like to joke that the coffee that's free at events is usually Starbucks. So not only are you spending $2 or $3 for a cup of coffee, it's the same coffee. It's the same coffee. So we're willing to do it because of experience. And you can rattle off these examples. And once again, going back to what I was just saying, we are all consumers in our personal life. And so we expect the same experience, if not better, when we show up for business. All right, so if that's customer experience and that's the opportunity, and you all will remember the experience you have much longer than the price that you paid. For those of you who caught an Uber and don't remember the price, you will remember, was the driver nice? Was the car dirty? Did it smell like smoke? Did he have water for you? Was it a pleasant conversation? You remember all this experience that you may have versus how much you spent. That's what I mean by we remember the experience that we have much longer than the product that we are buying. So now that's the opportunity. Executives are more aligned, customers are willing to spend more money and a premium. They're willing to engage with you better when you engage with them better. But unfortunately, here's the reality. The reality is that 57% of us have stopped buying from a company because a competitor provided a better experience. Sales was more responsive. Customer service answered it the first time. When I needed to return something, they asked no questions, they took it back, they returned it, they sent me advanced replacement part, and we moved on. That was totally worth the fact I paid a premium for it. And oh, by the way, if someone tries to slide in behind you and fight with you on price, you always have that experience to lean back on. Because the race to zero, as you know, is a race you don't want to be in. And so ultimately, if you can improve the experience, you can be a premium brand and defend it. But if you don't do it, customers will leave. This was really troubling for me, is that 50% of us actually believe and feel that the experience missed our expectation. So I thought I was going to get this, 5-star experience, and it was kind of 2-star, 3-star. My expectation wasn't met. Now all of a sudden, as a brand, you've really got to work hard to get them back up to where you wanted them to be in the first place, or your marketing team has actually presented to the street this really strong brand, and then when it came time to sell and deliver, those two things, there's a big gap. So customers are leaving and the expectations are not being met. So that's the reality, even though all those things are good. The priorities for marketers are, I want to engage with customers in real time. Number one, all those things I've just been talking about. But the biggest challenge is actually the exact same thing, engaging with customers in real time. So you guys could not be more squarely in the middle of this conversation. You have the product stack, you have the technical capability, you have the integration and delivery capability, you have the change management capability. You can drive this change. Remember, it's not about technology, it's about change. These are big changes for brands, and especially in the size brands you're working with. The complexity of multinational, the complexity of different brands under umbrellas, the complexity of legacy systems, more importantly, legacy mindsets. Becoming agile for a business is really tough. Wipro has a culture. That is your culture. Changing that culture would take a lot of time, a lot of effort, and I'm not necessarily saying you need to. But the point is, when you walk into an organization that has to do all these things, a lot of it has to do with changing culture, changing processes, changing systems, changing people. Technology is just an enabler to do this. So those that are outperforming are mapping this customer journey of the company to the way that they go to market, the way that they sell, the way that they engage. So now we have one more. Sales is becoming harder. So early in my career, I sold technology, carrying a quota. I like to call myself a recovering seller because I no longer carry a quota. but I feel like I vicariously get to sell through you, our great partners and our Salesforce team. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's getting harder. A lot of noise in the marketplace, a lot of misinformation, a lot of good information, but customers don't even know where to begin. And if you listen to what CEB, now Gartner says, right, a majority of the buyer journey is already done before they ever pick up the phone and start to engage with you, unless you're really good at being predictive and proactive. You are behind the curve when it's RFP time. So sales is becoming harder. Meeting these customer expectations, the speed, the engagement, you know me, you personalize it, and meeting these expectations is getting harder and harder and harder. But I will say, unfortunately, quota attainment has gone down for 5 straight years. So let's just pause on that for a second. Think of all the technology we've deployed. Think of all the training we've gone through. Think of all the compensation plan adjustments we've made, all with a goal of increasing quota attainment and performance, and quota has gone down for 5 straight years. So why is that? There could be all kinds of reasons, but I'm going to focus on this one for just a second. If 57% of your sellers actually expect to miss quota, that means day 1 of the quarter, day 1 of the week, day 1 of the day, hour 1 of the day, 57% are going to miss it. And the reason behind that is because 66% of a seller's time is spent on non-selling activities. So let's think about that a second. I'm going to pause again. All the technology we've deployed, all the training we've done, all the processes we've changed, quota attainment's going down, and 66% of the salesperson's time is spent on non-selling activities. So we've failed them somewhere along the way. This is where I think AI, machine learning, predictive, all that plays a huge role. If you can, as a leadership team, find a way to give back 5, 7, 8% of time, I guarantee you quotas go up. I mean, it's a natural reaction. And some of this is user, some of it is training, some of it is process, some of it is technology. The answer is yes to all of them. But if I came out and I said to you, what percentage of your sales team, in a particular region or vertical or industry hits quota, and you could tell me that number. And then I said, okay, what percentage of their time is spent on non-selling activities? And you can give me that number. If you don't know either of those numbers, how can you possibly ever hope to course correct from a growth perspective? You have to give people time back. So where do I begin? Where do you begin? If you believe part of that's true, some of that's true, all of it's true, none of it's true, at the end of the day, I don't need to convince you that everything I just said is valid, but I will tell you that whether it's our research, because some of that's ours, some of it is CSO Insights, which is now owned by Miller Heiman, some of it is Gartner, some of it's CEB. At the end of the day, it's pretty consistent, give or take a few percentage points. So the net of it is reality. And so we have to figure out what are the things we can do. If you're looking to outperform, it can't just be in delivery. If you're looking to outperform, it can't just be in messaging and go-to-market. If you're looking to outperform, it can't just be in sales and customer service. It has to be in all of them. So I believe we don't have a technology problem. I said early in my career, sort of 2002, when I was early in the cloud evolution, there was maybe a half a dozen marketing technology or MarTech products. Today, Scott Brinker tracks almost 7,600 MarTech products. There is no shortage of technology. I mean, that is taking the hair, splitting it 7,400 ways, and we uniquely solve each of those problems. What we have is a people process issue. The way you disseminate leads, train, what the comp is, you have a process issue. So there has to be a way we can get ourselves forward. Now, this is from a Bain study that 85% of executives surveyed, and a full 94 of those running companies with more than $5 billion in revenue, said internal, not external obstacles keep their companies from growing profitably. Shame on us. This is a process problem. Once again, not a technology problem. We've always done it this way. That's the culture of our brand. We tried that 3 years ago. It didn't work. Guys, I'm here to tell you, we're not in the same industry, market, competitive stack we were 3 years ago. We have far more capabilities. And so this is about people process. This absolutely is about people process. So we have to move from this is what we sell to more sort of this is what the customer wants, here's how we've aligned to that, and here's how we're going to take it to market. Keeping this full-time feedback loop across everything that you do and say. We have a philosophy that behind every big decision we make is a customer. Make an acquisition, go to verticals, pull .org together with Salesforce, launch this sales team, go create SMB Essentials. We're constantly listening to customers across our voice of the customer team and our competitive intelligence team and my team. And ultimately, we're feeding back in this loop of what should we be thinking about out into the future. So really getting a handle on what that is. Because ultimately, you have to optimize the way you sell. How you go to market, how difficult it is to get a proposal, how difficult it is to negotiate a contract, how to make sure you have scopes of work done, what are the milestones, are you meeting it, is everyone happy with it? It is a top priority. Because going back to what I was just saying, if 60-something% of your sales time is spent on non-selling, and quota has gone down for 5 straight years, trust me when I tell you, you have a sales optimization problem. And usually what ends up happening is 3 things. 1, we're having a revenue problem, let's hire more salespeople. We have a revenue problem, let's spend more marketing dollars. We have a revenue problem, let's cut costs and artificially show that we've grown the business. Instead of saying, if we have 10,000, 1,000, 3,000 sellers, and 50% are missing quota and 66% of their time is spent on non-selling activities, how do I move that up so that my sellers are actually outperforming what they did last quarter, last year, with the same amount of people? So is it a process, people, technology, and really combining those things to find the solution? And this is where you need to start. Full stop, I'll tell you, this one slide sums up the last 3 years in this role. I was really surprised to see how disconnected teams were between sales and marketing. That's sort of the age-old battle. But that customer service was not involved in many of the conversations I was having with executives about growth. Sales and marketing's in the room battling about who does what, but customer service wasn't even at the table. And a lot of this had to do with goals and metrics. So I'm just going to go back to the example of, call resolution time. At the end of the day, I'll give you an example. I called my telco provider because I had a hard failure on my internet. I work from home. And I just wanted it fixed. So I started out in chat. It moved over to phone. The customer service agent called me. At 29 minutes, he had to hang up on me and call me back. 29 minutes later, he had to do it again. And 29 minutes later, he had to do it again. I didn't actually care that I was 90 minutes on the phone. But why did he have to hang up and call me back? Because the call metric was you can't be on the phone longer than 30 minutes. Somebody made that decision. Who's never sat in the call center? Trust me. Right? So disconnected metrics will drive that behavior. And in the end, if you have disconnected teams and you have disconnected metrics, me, customer, your customer, I feel it. I had to hang up and call every 29 minutes. I had to do these things because the systems and processes for the people who don't wake up every day trying to deliver a bad experience, but that's what they were left with. So we have a show in the US called Undercover Boss. Are you familiar with it? Okay, so I write about this in the book, but here's my little synopsis of it. I find it fascinating that they spend the first 5 or 6 minutes of the show disguising the executive. Why? Because no one would recognize them anyway. You could walk right in your store, someone would say, "Can I help you?" I mean, they don't even know who you are. So ultimately, this is about you have to get closer to the customer, you have to get closer to the people, you have to get closer to those. And so sales and marketing become this default, which is all about outperforming. Got to get sales and marketing together. That's a natural. That's the way you have to do it. And improving the likelihood requires this investment in technology. This isn't all about us. You just have to have it. But more importantly, going back to what I said in that second circle in the beginning was you have to leverage it. You have to use it. That's the way you're going to outperform. You have to take advantage of what you have. And growth at the end of the day for me absolutely is a thinking game. You just need to outthink your competition on these things we've just been talking about. Make time for selling. Trade your intuitions of this is the way we've always done it to maximize the insights. Because you are investing in technology, take advantage of it. Don't chase your perceived competition. Who you compete with yesterday, it may not be who you compete with tomorrow. Just focus on what your customers want from you. They're your customers, they're not anyone else's. What they want, they chose to buy from you once. How do you keep them buying from you again? Don't be afraid of the technology. Embrace it, use it, leverage it, get smarter about where and how you reach out. And ultimately, your differentiation will be your mental model. And what I mean by that is Wipro has a very unique culture. The way in which you do business is your mental model. People can replicate the products you sell, the delivery you do, the integration work you do, but they cannot replicate this room. And that's what you have to maximize and put your foot on from an outperformance. And then rally around the customer. Who are they? What do they want from you? Why did they buy from you? Why did they leave you? Why didn't they buy from you? Everybody needs to know the answers to that so that when you make decisions, you're making it based on the customer. And then empower each other. Growth, sales, business is a team sport. You have to empower each other. You have to make sure that you're always there in the end for each other. So my sort of closing is get comfortable with being uncomfortable because these things aren't easy. And the backbone of corporate growth is personal growth. So I ask you, what will you do different? What will you do differently because of what you've heard here today? What you're going to hear, what you heard this morning, what you're going to hear this afternoon, what you're going to hear tomorrow. Whatever you take from this, I ultimately challenge you in the end to be bold. Be bold in the decisions that you make, stand behind them, be there for each other, and know that together Wipro can be highly competitive if you start to focus on growth with a different kind of mindset. So with that, I thank you guys very much for having me here today and for the team for inviting me. I'm always a champion in your corner, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you so much.